Sea is not only Northwest Europe's biggest wind farm, it's also our largest nature conserve. Can we combine them both? Or is those big bird shredders and fish killers are a big threat to nature? Or can wind farms even improve ecology? To talk about that, we have here Eline van Onselen, a marine ecologist at the rich North Sea. Yeah, Eline, good morning. You're a marine biologist at the rich North Sea. You are founded by Natuur en Milieu and the North Sea Foundation. What do you try to achieve?
What do we try to achieve? Well, of course, we want to achieve more nature where it should be. And right now, there isn't a lot of nature left. And with the rich North Sea, we really try to take the opportunity that offshore wind offers us. Because in an offshore wind farm, fishing is not allowed, bottom trawling is not allowed, and most of the other activities aren't allowed either. So nature has the opportunity to restore, to thrive, and we can help it kickstart a little bit.
Take me to how big is the problem? Because we know on land the bees are dying. How is it in the sea?
The problem is quite big. And I always like to show this picture because in the EU we have rules. We set up our own legislation. And the Marine Strategy Framework Directive gives us certain goals to work towards. And these are goals. And during the last evaluation, you can see, you don't really have to read it. You can just see the green ones are the goals that we actually make. Well, that's not great. And to top that off, this one is about the North Sea bottom. So we call it the benthic environment. And the blue that you see in this graph is where we reach our goals.
I don't see blue.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
That's my point. Yeah, there isn't a lot of blue there. So the North Sea is really a degraded system. It's not doing great. And we have this shift in baseline syndrome where we keep on looking from, well, a different perspective. But if you would go back 200 years, it would be great, because then 30% of our North Sea floor was a reef. It was, well, very much alive, and we fished it all out.
Okay, so, and then all the wind parks came.
Yes. Then the wind parks came. And we see that wind parks, there's a lot of risks involved, of course. So, for example, if you build a wind farm, there's underwater noise, there's vibrations, there's cabling going on, so we have electromagnetic fields, there's birds that can fly into your turbine, there's habitat displacement, all kinds of things. And what we see, what's going on right now, is we like to use the mitigation hierarchy, which has two sides. And we focus on one side, on the risk side, where we avoid. So we put our wind farm somewhere in the sea, so we have to choose a site, for example. And then you can avoid sites which are very important for nature, or for certain species, or for certain habitats. And then we try to mitigate the effects. And that's what you see here on this picture. You can play around with that a little bit, but you're still going to place a wind farm somewhere, and you're still going to have effects. And maybe you can reduce, the noise maybe with a bubble curtain, for example, but there will still be noise. And maybe you can, choose a good place for your foundation, but your foundation is still going to be built somewhere, so you're still going to have, sort of leftover effects there.
Okay, but yeah.
Yeah, and then, of course, these are some examples of what you can do to minimize those effects. So, for example, if you don't want a bird to fly into your turbine, maybe you can make one of the rotor blades black. You can play around with that a little bit. But what we like to really focus on, because our mother organization, so the Natuur en Milieu and the North Sea Foundation, they really focus on the risks of offshore wind farms. But with our program, we really want to focus on the opportunities as well. I already told you about the lack of fishing, for example, and other activities. And if you place anything in the North Sea, it can be, a pile of rocks, it can be something that floats. It will create a reef effect. And that's very important to realize, that whatever we do, you're going to have an effect anyway. So we might as well exploit that. So then we come to the other side of the mitigation hierarchy. So we had avoid and mitigate, but we can also restore. So we can try to recreate what used to be there. And then the last part is offsetting, and that's basically going a little bit beyond that, because we are working in a degraded system. So if you're trying to restore what used to be there before you put in your turbine, then you still have a degraded system. Yeah. So we want to go a step beyond that and really, well, enhance nature. And you can do that, for example, well, with offsetting, we still have to learn a lot. So it's hard to give really concrete examples. Here's a nice picture of a bird colony. If birds fly into your turbine, well, there's not a lot you can do about that. Well, maybe you can paint your rotor blade black or anything like that, but there might still be casualties. So maybe it would be beneficial for this species if you go to the breeding colony and try to, well, protect that breeding colony, to get the species, well, just to give them a little boost from another direction.
Yeah. And if we, oh yeah, you used the tip the skill. Should we look at we can minimize the risk and we are not worse off than we were before? Or do we have a huge opportunity, thanks to wind farms, we can restore ecology beyond any imagination we had?
I think there is a huge opportunity. Indeed, I want to be very positive, but we should not forget the risks, right? We don't know the long-term effects yet of offshore wind on the broader scale. So we were talking about birds, for example, that fly into the turbine, but you also have to look underwater. If your turbine is somewhere, it might affect stratification. So that's the layering in your water column. And the stratification then again may affect your primary production. So that's algae that grow in the water. And these are the basis for your food chain. So your whole food web might change if we put a lot of wind farms in the sea. But on the other hand, this is the moment to go for restoration and to go for nature enhancement, because we have the space, right? Up until, well, last year, actually, you could fish basically anywhere where you wanted to fish. You could do drilling, you could do sand extraction, you could do mining. There's, well, a lot of activities going on, but in a wind farm, it's a secluded area. And that peace and quiet really is an opportunity. But we need a little bit more than that. So we need, well, the input, I think, from the industry, but also from the governments to really, well, put in a financial obligation as well, and to really go for restoration.
Yes. Okay. You are doing a lot to figure this out. Take us to some of the most exciting things you're doing.
Yeah, so I think one of the strengths of the Rich North Sea is that we partnered up with the industry for an NGO that is quite unique, actually. And we really want to work together. So we partnered up with for example, Eneco, with Blauwind, with Vattenfall, and we said, okay, we want to enhance nature. We know you have, well, a positive or a nature positive goal. How can we do this together? See if we can go on. There we go. So we started projects. And what we really see is that enhancing nature in an offshore wind farm is something new. And there isn't a lot of experience out there yet, so we really have to learn by doing. And that's also what we really, what we really want to do and what we think other people should do as well, because we don't have the time to wait 10 years until we have, well, outcomes of a scientific research, which is also very important. But the outroll of offshore wind is so incredibly fast that we need to keep up with that, right? If we don't start doing it right now, we're going to be too late. So we partnered up, and here on this picture you see the little stars, and this is where we have projects. So in the south, in the Borsele area, we have two projects. One where we tag lobster, and there are artificial reefs there, and we see what happens to their behavior. We also have a project there with, well, I have a nice shirt on, with oysters. Oysters. Flat oysters. This one is a Japanese oyster, actually. And we try to kickstart their population. In Luchterduinen, we do the same, also with oysters. And we have in Hollandse Kust Zuid, we look at the water replenishment holes. And then in the north, we have Gemini, which is just on this picture there on the top, where we work with oysters as well. And then with number 4, it's a little bit of an exception because it's not an offshore wind farm. Because there are a lot of rules with working on offshore wind. So we have an offshore test site where we can test, for example, artificial reefs. How does it work? What do you have to do if you want to deploy them? Monitoring techniques, etc.
Okay, so these are a lot of things you're working on. Where should it all lead to?
Good question. Well, I think we need a dot on the horizon. Let's see if this works. No, it doesn't.
Maybe if I do my magic touch.
Yeah, do it. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so we need this dot on the horizon. So we need a vision, but a shared vision, not only a Dutch vision, but a sectoral and a sea basin vision. Where are we working towards? We need a master plan. Because right now we're still having discussions. Do we want oysters in a wind farm where, well, it's a sandy dynamic habitat? And someone needs to make a decision about that. So that's very important. We also need governments that support nature enhancement and nature restoration. Right now we see that the current legislation really isn't built for nature restoration. It's built for the industry. And if we want to do something in a wind park, sometimes we just can't because the legislation is not made for that. And right now we also have to keep up this pace. Right? With offshore wind, it's growing at an incredible rate. If we don't couple nature restoration next to that, we're just going to miss the boat. So.
This morning I was having breakfast with Paul, who does the conference over there, and he said, yeah, this whole ecology in wind farms is such a Dutch discussion. In the UK, they don't have this discussion because it's already in the tenders. If you're not nature inclusive, you don't win the tender. Are we behind in Europe? Or?
Well, I don't think we're behind, but we have to keep up. And that's the thing. I think actually well, at least in the North Sea basin, we are experimenting. And that's good, because that's the way we have to learn. In the Netherlands, we've had, well, one nature-inclusive tender, and one is coming up. And I think that's a good step towards the future, but it's not enough, because it should be in every tender, in every country, in every sea basin. So that's what we have to strive towards. And I think, and that's something that's the last point actually, the tenders, that's nice, because it gives us a chance to innovate and to compete. But we also need a financial obligation, and I think this is really important, because you can only do so much in your own little offshore wind farm. Right? Because we are working in a degraded system, you also have to work outside of your wind farm and outside of your safety zone. And as our industry partners know, it's very difficult to work outside of that because it's not in your jurisdiction anymore. So we need a fund or a government that says, okay, everyone that works in the offshore environment needs to put a certain amount into our fund, and we can use that for general and holistic nature restoration.
Yeah, and yeah, it works again.
And of course, we are learning a lot right now, and we want to share our knowledge. And we know that other people are working on the same topic as well, and we want that knowledge to be spread as well. So we partnered up again, this time with Accenture. And Accenture is helping us build an online platform which we called the Toolbox. And the Toolbox should be a place where people can learn about nature enhancement and also spread knowledge. So we use design thinking to really start from the point of what does the user need, what are they looking for, and how can we design a platform that will be used in the future and can really help people to, well, have what they are looking for in nature enhancement. Yeah, so we have a first demo version online right now, and I invite everyone also to come to our stand later on to check this out. And what we designed are 3 chapters, so to say, right now. So the first one is about nature enhancements. So you can do a lot in your wind farm. You can do things with your scour protection, for example. You can place artificial reefs, all these kinds of stuff. And in the nature enhancement section, you can learn more about the goals and the use for that, but also we have a sort of catalog where you can browse through different nature enhancement products. Then we have an interactive map where we want to place all projects on nature enhancement and offshore wind. Of course, we started out with our own projects, but it's also possible for other people to put their project on there as well. So we really want a place to give overview for people to be able to go there and get more information in one go. And then the last one is more about practical information. And the practical information really is something that we feel while we're trying to innovate in a new area, relatively new area, is something that we really lack. So someone that tells you, okay, you need a certain permit to do that. You're going to have to do a certain course before you can go into the field. And maybe we need a list of certain ships that can enter offshore wind farms, a list of places where you can get your flat oysters, for example. So really practical information in one place.
Yeah.
I think your magic touch is going away.
The magic yeah.
So this is an example of our the nature enhancement catalog. So this is an image, something that you would see underwater. Of course, in North Sea you wouldn't see this because it's very turbid, so you don't see anything. But this would be a look into a wind farm. So you see the turbine, you see the scour protection, and there's all things you can do. So you can click on that, you get some information, and then you go towards the catalog to really get inspired of what you can do. This is the map I was talking about, so the interactive map. We're still working on making it pretty. So it's really a beta version. So we really invite you to come to us, look at our first version and give us input. What do you need? Is this something you would use? Is this something you would recommend? Or is there something really specific that you're looking for? And then we can put it in there.
Yeah.
I think the last one is, you can click 3 times, I think. Yeah, there we go. Those are the practical pages. And these also really need your input, because we want to know what you are looking for. If you want to work with nature enhancement, then of course we're going to need to know if we're creating something that you can actually use. So this is our first idea, our first try at it, and hopefully, together we can actually make it to something usable.
Wonderful. So that's a toolbox that's not only nice in theory, but works in practice for the industry.
Hopefully.
This morning I was talking with someone about circularity in designing wind farms. He said, right now it's nice to have, but if you don't start now, in a few years from now it will be need to have. You will have a competitive advantage if you start learning now. It's the same true for ecological design?
Absolutely, and I think that's with everything you do offshore, because we are making use of ecosystem services, right? If we don't take care of what nature is offering us, then at some point it's going to disappear.
Is this something that's going to cost me money, or something if I make oysters, I can sell them, I earn even more?
Well, I think at first it's going to cost you money. And that money, of course, has to come from somewhere. So we need to have some sort of business case going. And that's the difficult part if you talk about nature restoration, because it takes, decades before you see the actual effect. And right now we are working with the effects that our parents and grandparents and grandparents created for us, right? So it really takes a long time. But in the end, yes, you're going to have a better,
Because of inflation, shortage of materials, shortage of workers, developments in the market, the business case of wind farms isn't really developing very positively. There's no money left for nature.
That's really sad, yeah. But, we have to think, it's a little bit of a catch-22, right? And I feel like I have to say this, I don't say this a lot, but with the current, political climate change is real, right? And it's something that we have to work with and have to work against. And offshore wind is one of the tools that we can use, right? But it's not the only thing that we can do. We have to look at other sources of sustainable energy as well. We have to look at ways to store energy as well. And maybe we can also reduce our energy intake. Right, and then nature, of course, is the base of everything that we do offshore.
Nature is the base. Nature is the base, and people come find you to make your toolbox so good that everybody is going to use it.
Good.
Thank you so much, Eline. Yeah, and then are there questions from the audience? Yeah, I see one question over there. Good morning. Who are you?
My name is Anthony Delernia. I'm with the Delernia Marine Services in the U.S., consultants in New York State. You mentioned lobsters. You had done some lobster research. Could you share with me, have you discovered anything? And if you have, can you share that with us, please?
Yeah, so our lobster research really looks at the behavior of lobsters in an offshore wind farm where we place certain structures. So we had a grid where we could follow the lobsters that were tagged. And inside that grid, we had one turbine with regular scour protection. And we had 4 artificial reefs placed. And 2 of them had their own scour protection as well. 2 of them didn't. And the reefs, they were concrete tubes. Just placed on top of each other, different sizes. And we tagged the lobster and we looked at their movement behavior and if they were, for example, feeding or not. And we saw that they had preference for certain areas where they would like to, well, stay for longer periods of time. And what we saw, for example, is that the artificial reefs, well, they can add something to the lobster habitat. So if you just work with regular scour protection, well, there's rocks, of course, and they can dig a little bit into it, but there aren't pre-made holes which they can just go into. And we see that happening with the larger structures. So there is actually a report in the making. It'll be released, I think, at the end of this year. So if you come to me later, I'll write down your email address and I'll send it to you.
Can food production and nature restoration go hand in hand, or should it be really? Should we eat the lobsters or let them live freely?
First, we should address the degradation of the system, right? Get it up to a point where it's healthy again. And after that, well, then maybe you can look at, well, what's the overflow, right? And see what we can do with that. But don't go back to bottom trawling in your offshore wind farm, because then you're just, well, destroying what you created.
We have one last question. Yeah. Oh, you go run with your microphone.
Hi, Rainier Hilleris Lambers, BP. Hello again.
Hi.
Nice talk. Loved it.
Thanks.
I have a really basic question. When are you going to launch this site? Or can't you answer that?
I don't have a specific date, but hopefully at the end of this year it will be live, but a beta version online. We have a list of people who are interested, so come visit us at our stand, and you're on the list.
Yay.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much. And this is BP. Okay, one last question, very quick, because you're so popular.
Hi, Twan Kolkert of the Ocean Health Initiative of Van Hoort. When will you...
Look a bit more like a rapper, yeah.
Twan Kolkert of the Ocean Health Initiative of Van Hoort. When will you install your new projects?
Well, right now we're at the end of our financing. Well, the first dream fund that we had, it was until 2023. Right now we're working on more finances to continue our program. So if we're going to install something, it's going to be in the next, well, 1 or 2 years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. If you have more questions, come find you at your stand. Help make your toolbox even better and more suitable for the industry so it actually will launch off.
Yep.
And last year we already talked with BP and I asked them, how long is it going to take until I can buy oysters and mussels with BP on it? And they said, ooh, we're going to think about it. Yeah. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next talk when we're going to talk about quality and price. But so far, thank you so much, Eline.